Hey guys, back at it with some more low-level invasions in here. I've got the Dragonslayer axe again. If you saw my previous video, you'll know that I think the Dragonslayer axe with a raw infusion on it is really pretty powerful. With a lightning buff on it with a resin, it hits around 430. With this setup, actually I think it'd be independent of the setup because it's raw, it has no scaling, so I think that number would be pretty consistent across builds. And then with a bundle, it hits for around 458. So here I'm just kind of checking it out to see who's here. You can see I immediately get the point down. I get a host or a phantom spamming me with the S-stock. So these guys really aren't interested in any of the friendly preliminaries. So we're going to get right into it here. And I briefly considered just forcing them to chase me around, but I'm going to at least try to make a stand here. I'm trying to strike a balance between the whole using the environment and the enemy's means of invasion versus just getting in there, mixing shit up with the party, and just start cracking skulls. So I'm gonna at least try the skull cracking here for a moment. I bait him into the weapon art on that bow, and now everybody else is gonna get involved. Call the rolling attack with Mr. S-stock there, and this is one of the benefits of switching to this weapon here. With the Hornet riposte, I'm able to take him for over half his health. I see here too that they're all healed up. They're at the bonfire with all the enemies preceding it cleared, so they've probably just gotten done clearing out this level. So they're probably all at low health, low Estus. You see the Phantom there, he's out of Estus. I'm a little wary of that Lucerne though. It's time to put the trusty crossbow to work here. Unlock, just shoot at their feet. Goodbye, Mr. Phantom. I try to get in there for the roll backstab, which requires you to roll in just after the active frames of the attack, and I was a little early. Catching the panic roll. Host here makes a pretty big mistake going for the weapon art without getting the hit confirm on the first attack. And now I'm ready to chase it down with the crossbow. You, sir, get a point down on behalf of your phantoms. I find that invading here is a little interesting. I'd never really done it before. Typically there's kind of your standard go-to invasion areas, and this is definitely not one of them. And in my experience, when I try invading into one of these areas where you don't see a lot of invasions, there's generally a reason for it. I think probably here the main reason is simply because all the poison swamp. It's a hassle for the invader just like it is for the host. But I actually kind of enjoy these invasions. It's actually surprisingly easy to find people. One of the main reasons is when that poison procs on people, it makes it very easy to track them down through the swamp. And for that very reason, you'll want to make sure that you carry tons and tons of poison moss on you so that you don't give that same key information over to the host and his party. So this guy seems kind of enthused for some PvP, and honestly I respect anybody here who's going to play through this game solo. I come across so many parties where it's a big group of people that are just going to steamroll level. You know, props to this guy. I noticed right away he's swinging multiple times. I could have parried him right at the beginning, but it doesn't seem very sporting. So I'm going to kind of let him have his whacks here a bit. I noticed here, like, I knew they had improved frostbite, but I didn't realize how much they had improved it. That took a pretty big chunk of my health, probably putting it on par with bleed. Now I'm starting to put some pressure on him. Now it's time to end it. I enjoy those encounters, even though they may not be challenging from a fight perspective. It's always nice to see a host who isn't afraid, who isn't going to just run away and go summon an army after you, who's going to stand his ground and try to fight. That's how you learn. As I mentioned earlier, the poison is so helpful. So I know right away right where the host is. But this Fair Swamp's a fun invasion area. It's really pretty big. I keep a dagger on me so that I can use the weapon art to get through the muck pretty quickly. Keep tons of poison moss on me for poison. It seems like this host may not have any. He hasn't healed yet, and it's doing a fairly big chunk of damage to him. And I suspected he was watching me from behind, and I was correct. Here comes a blue. This guy's being pretty cool, so I'm just going to kind of hang back here and wait for the blue. I know they buffed poison, at least in PvP, so when it's player inflicted, I don't know that they buffed it in PvE. My guess is they did not, just because they don't want to mess with the balance in PvE, so they'll just buff it or nerf something purely for PvP. And here I see the blueberries using, I forget the name of the faith spell, but it cures afflictions like poison. That's a spell that was completely useless previously, but now probably has a bit of utility. And it's kind of interesting to see that he already had it equipped here, because he could have gotten pulled in from any world. He didn't have to be playing here in Fair Swamp. And I see the host is kind of circling a bit here, staying out of the way, but probably trying to weigh the pros and cons of coming in and ganking me, but he seems to resist the urge. And here I'm able to dispense with the blue. The host collapses, doesn't come rushing in on me to try to gank me, even though that was his right. You know, from his perspective, by not ganking me, he had probably given up on any hope he had of actually winning this invasion. So, you know, I don't think hosts are obligated to avoid ganking. I think he would have been well within his rights to have done so. But the fact that he refrained from it makes me want to help the guy out instead of sending him back to the bonfire. So I drop him some purple moss since he seems to be lacking. Especially this early, it can be hard to find and can be expensive for hosts. So I drop that off to him, and then I black crystal out of his world. So again, when I see solo hosts, I don't like to just rush up on them and initiate attack. I like to give them a second or two to compose themselves, make sure they can get away from the enemy mobs so we can have a good fight. It's not a good fight just ganking him, but this guy takes advantage of my generosity and just decides he's going to start wailing on me. So any sympathy I had for this guy and his play has immediately evaporated, and I'm going to go full try hard on him. Those backstabs with the axes just seem like they're difficult to get sometimes. There he makes the mistake of trying to third R1 with me at his back. And now he's in trouble. And that's where the crossbow really pays its rent. That exact use case where you've got a host at low health rolling away trying to heal. They think they're good to heal because they're quite a ways away from you, but that crossbow comes out and puts an end to them. And here you can see me with the dagger, using it to cross the muck, and I am being very aggressive in healing the poison buildup just because I don't want the host to get the drop on me. I see there's at least one host. There may be other phantoms. I can't tell at this point, and I want to try to retain the element of surprise. And of course, I'm making a liar out of myself because just a moment ago I said I don't like to just come up to hosts and start wailing on them. But I decided for whatever reason to stick with the dagger. I've actually never ever used a dagger before, PvP or PvE, and I decided to just have a go with it and see how it does. And it's really not doing much damage. This doesn't have any kind of effect like poison or bleed, so it's really just kind of tickling him. But the advantage is if you get a a player that wants to just try to spam R1 out of your attack, you will always interrupt them, and there he makes the mistake of trying to shield. And unfortunately, I'd removed the Hornet Ring or this fight would have been over already. And you can see I'm not familiar with the reach of the weapon, so I'm whiffing. And this was interesting. He was trying to parry, and I just kept spamming right through it. Now it's a medium shield, so it doesn't have nearly as many parry frames, but I was surprised to see that he did not get at least a single parry out of this. I really expected he would be able to get one, and I don't know if it has something to do with the active frames of the attack of the weapon. Not sure why that is. But it kind of matches my experience in trying to play against these and trying to parry them. It's usually not a good idea. And here the mobs come up and surround him. And I mock him a bit for his parry attempts. So I got bored after a while and decided to go back to Cathedral the Deep. And it's never a good sign when Host and his Phantom are right on top of you when you spawn into the world. So I want to try to get away from these guys, see what I'm really up against, heal up, maybe buff my weapon, but they are right on top of me. And a lot of times in these cases, the smarter hosts, they won't chase after you. But this particular Phantom probably thinks he's caught me in a moment of weakness. So he's being very aggressive and coming after me. And here I think I've got enough room for the buff. And I'm wrong by about 1/10 of a second. I had started rolling, but that was on my screen. On his screen, due to latency, I had not yet initiated the roll, and I got the backstab. And it's a good thing he wasn't using the Hornet Ring, or that might have been the end of me right there. Does a decent job there delaying the follow-on R1 with bugs, but then he tried to heal in my face, which was a mistake. So I see he's still got the maggots on him. And those will just keep bleeding you over and over until you take care of the problem, either with like a torch or with the blood moss. So that's probably pretty smart, just trying to make sure he at least opens up the shortcut, so even if I kill him, he can get back here pretty easily. As the end of him, and that's also the end of my video. Thanks a lot for checking in, and stay tuned for more.